How one fisherman's secret escape saved him from a deadly hippo attack. In March 1996, a fisherman on the Zambezi River made a decision that saved his life when 4 tons of muscle and teeth tried to swallow him whole. His secret wasn't strength, it wasn't speed. It was something nobody teaches, something most people would never think to do. And it's the only reason he's alive today. The water explodes. No warning, no sound, just eruption. Paul Templar is in the water. 1 second he's in his canoe. The next, he's underwater, being dragged down by something massive. He can't see, can't breathe, can't think. Then he realizes where he is. He's inside a hippo's mouth, from the waist down. March 9th, 1996, Zambezi River, Zimbabwe. Paul Templar is 28 years old. He's a safari guide, one of the best. He knows this river like he knows his own hands. Every channel, every sandbar, every hippopod. He's done this route hundreds of times. 3 canoes, 6 tourists, 3 apprentice guides, 1 safety kayak, standard safari, easy day. Until it isn't. They're paddling downstream. The water is calm, the sun is brutal. The tourists are happy, cameras clicking, capturing Africa's beauty. Then they see the hippos, a pod of about 12, maybe 150 meters away. Not close, not a threat, yet. Paul adjusts course. Standard procedure. Give them space. Paddle around. No problem. But the 3rd canoe falls behind, off course. Paul doesn't know how, doesn't know why. It just happens, and then everything goes wrong. Thud. The sound echoes across the water. Paul turns. The 3rd canoe is airborne. The back end catapulted up. Evans, the guide in the stern, flies through the air like a rag doll. He hits the water hard, and the current starts washing him toward a female hippo and her calf. Paul doesn't think, he just reacts. He turns his canoe around. He has to get Evans out, now, before the female attacks, before Evans drowns, before everything gets worse. He yells to Ben, another guide. "Get the clients to safety." Ben nods. He paddles to the overturned canoe, gets the tourists, pulls them to a rock in the middle of the river. A rock hippos can't climb. Meanwhile, Paul is paddling toward Evans. Fast. The gap is closing. Evans is in the water, swimming, but not fast enough. The female and calf are getting closer. Paul sees it. A bow wave, coming straight at him, like a torpedo in an old war movie. Either a hippo or a massive crocodile. Either way, deadly. He knows what to do. He's done it before. He slaps the water with his paddle, hard. The sound is loud. The percussion travels underwater. It's supposed to turn the animal away. It works. The bow wave stops. Paul keeps paddling, getting closer to Evans. Their fingers are almost touching. Almost there. Almost safe. And then the water between them erupts. Paul's world goes dark. It takes him a few seconds to understand, to process, to realize what's happening. From the waist down, he's in water. He can feel it. Cold, moving. The river. From the waist up, it's different. Warm, not wet like water, but not dry either. And pressure. Incredible pressure on his lower back. He tries to move. Can't. He's inside a hippo's mouth, up to his waist, down its throat. The hippo's jaws are closed around him, its teeth pressing into his back, its throat muscles contracting, trying to swallow. Paul can't breathe, can't scream, can't do anything. And then the hippo spits him out. He bursts to the surface, sucks in air, sees Evans right in front of him. "We gotta get out of here," Paul shouts. But Evans is in trouble, bad trouble. His face is pale, his eyes are wide. He's not swimming right. Paul starts swimming toward him, and then he feels it. The hippo is coming back. He turns, sees the massive head, the open jaws, the teeth. It grabs his left arm. The pain is instant, blinding. The hippo's teeth sink into his flesh, through muscle, scraping bone, and then it drags him under. Paul is underwater, being shaken like a dog shakes a toy. The hippo's jaws are locked on his arm. The pressure is crushing. The pain is beyond anything he's ever felt. He can't breathe. His lungs are screaming. His vision is going dark. And then he remembers something he learned years ago, something most people don't know. Hippos don't chew. They bite and shake. But they don't hold on forever. If you don't fight, if you don't struggle, if you go limp, they sometimes let go. It's counterintuitive. Every instinct says fight, struggle, escape. But Paul knows better. He goes limp, completely limp, like he's dead. The hippo shakes him one more time, then releases. Paul floats to the surface, gasps for air. His left arm is mangled, blood is pouring into the water. But he's alive. He looks around. Evans is gone, disappeared. The hippo took him. Paul starts swimming, one arm, toward the rock where the tourists are, where Ben is, where safety is. But the hippo isn't done. It comes back, again, grabs Paul by the shoulder, drags him under. Again, Paul goes limp. Again, the hippo releases. Again, Paul surfaces, swims, one arm, blood everywhere, vision blurring. The hippo attacks. Again. This time it grabs his back. Its teeth sink into his spine. The pain is indescribable. Paul thinks this is it. This is how he dies. But he goes limp. One more time, and the hippo lets go. One more time. Paul doesn't know how many times it happens. 4, maybe 5. Each time the hippo grabs him. Each time Paul goes limp. Each time the hippo releases. Finally, he reaches the rock. Ben grabs him, pulls him up. The tourists are screaming. Paul is covered in blood. His left arm is barely attached. His back is shredded. He has 38 bite wounds. But he's alive. Evans isn't. The hippo killed him. Drowned him. His body is found later, downstream. Paul is evacuated. Helicopter, hospital, 7 hours of surgery. His left arm is amputated. His back requires hundreds of stitches. He nearly dies from blood loss. But he survives. Against odds that should have killed him. Against an animal that kills 500 people a year. Against a predator with a bite force 3 times stronger than a lion. He survives because he knew the secret, the thing nobody teaches, the thing that goes against every instinct. When a hippo attacks, you don't fight. You go limp. Most people don't know this. Most people fight, struggle, try to escape. And the hippo keeps biting, keeps shaking, keeps attacking until they're dead. But if you go limp, if you play dead, the hippo sometimes loses interest. It's not hunting you for food, it's defending its territory. Once it thinks you're not a threat, once it thinks you're dead, it might let go. Might. Not always, but sometimes, and sometimes is enough. Paul Templar's survival changed how safari guides train, changed how people understand hippo behavior, changed what we know about surviving the deadliest large animal in Africa. But his story doesn't end there, because surviving the attack was only the beginning. The recovery was brutal. Months in the hospital, learning to live with one arm, dealing with PTSD, nightmares, flashbacks, the sound of water triggering panic attacks. Paul could have given up, could have left Africa, could have found a safe job in a safe place, far from hippos and rivers and danger. But he didn't. He went back to the river, back to guiding, back to the place that nearly killed him. I couldn't let fear win, he says. I couldn't let that hippo take away everything I loved. But he changed how he guides, changed the safety protocols, changed the training. He teaches every new guide the secret, the thing that saved his life. Go limp. It sounds simple, but it's not. Because when 4 tons of muscle and teeth is trying to kill you, every fiber of your being screams to fight, to struggle, to escape. Overriding that instinct requires something most people don't have: control, discipline, the ability to think clearly when death is seconds away. Paul has that, and now he teaches it. But there's more to the story, more to the secret, because going limp isn't the only thing Paul did right. There were other decisions, other choices, other techniques that kept him alive. First, he kept his head above water whenever possible. Hippos drown their victims. They drag them underwater and hold them there until they stop moving. But Paul fought to surface every time, gasped air every chance he got, kept his lungs full, kept his brain oxygenated, kept himself conscious. Second, he didn't panic. Panic kills. Panic makes you thrash, makes you waste energy, makes you make mistakes. Paul stayed calm as anyone can be while being eaten alive. He thought, he planned, he executed. Third, he knew the hippo's behavior, knew it would release eventually, knew it wasn't trying to eat him, knew it was defending territory. That knowledge gave him hope, gave him strategy, gave him a chance. Fourth, he had help. Ben pulled him onto the rock. The tourists applied, pressure to his wounds. The helicopter arrived quickly. Without that help, he would have bled out, would have died on that rock, would have become another statistic. Survival is never just one thing, it's a combination, a perfect storm of knowledge, luck, skill, and help. Paul had all of it. Barely, but enough. Today, Paul Templar lives in the United States. He's a motivational speaker. He tells his story to thousands of people, not just about hippos, but about resilience, about overcoming trauma, about facing fear. He's written a book. What Doesn't Kill You Makes You Stronger, a hippo attack survivor's story. It's a bestseller. It's changed lives. It's inspired people facing their own battles, their own hippos. But he still thinks about Evans, the guide who didn't make it, the friend who died that day. Paul carries that weight, that guilt, that why him and not me question that has no answer. Evans was a better guide than me, Paul says. He was more experienced, more skilled. He should have survived. I should have died. But that's not how it works. Survival isn't about deserving. It's not about fairness. It's about split-second decisions and random chance and being in the right place at the right time, or the wrong place at the wrong time. The Zambezi River still has hippos, hundreds of them. They still attack. They still kill. Fishermen, tourists, locals, anyone who gets too close, anyone who threatens their territory, anyone who's unlucky. In 2016, hippos in Senegal's Gambia River killed multiple fishermen. The attacks were so frequent, so deadly, that entire fishing communities abandoned the river, abandoned their livelihoods, abandoned the place their families had fished for generations. Because you can't fight a hippo, you can't negotiate with it, you can't reason with it, You can only avoid it or survive it, if you're lucky. In 2024, 5 fishermen in Zambia were killed when a hippo attacked their boat, capsized it, dragged them underwater one by one. None survived. In Lake Victoria, hippo attacks on fishermen are so common they barely make the news anymore. It's just part of life, part of the risk, part of the price of fishing in hippo territory. Hippos kill more people in Africa than lions, elephants, and crocodiles combined. They're not predators. They don't hunt humans for food, but they're territorial, aggressive, unpredictable, and incredibly dangerous. They can run 30 miles per hour on land, faster than any human. They can hold their breath for 5 minutes underwater. They can bite through bone like it's paper. They can open their jaws to 150 degrees. They have canine teeth 20 inches long. And they're everywhere. In rivers, in lakes, in wetlands. Anywhere there's water in sub-Saharan Africa, there are hippos. Most attacks happen at dawn or dusk, when hippos are most active, when they're moving between water and grazing areas, when they're most territorial, most aggressive, most dangerous. Fishermen are the primary victims. They work in hippo territory. They're on the water before dawn. They're there at dusk. They're in small boats, vulnerable, exposed. And most of them don't know the secret, don't know to go limp, don't know that fighting makes it worse, don't know that playing dead might save them. Paul Templar is trying to change that. He's working with conservation groups, with safari companies, with local communities, teaching the secret, spreading the knowledge, trying to save lives. But it's slow, because the secret is counterintuitive, because it goes against every instinct, because telling someone to go limp when a hippo is trying to kill them sounds insane. But it works. Not always, but sometimes, and sometimes is enough. There are other survivors, not many, but some, and most of them did the same thing Paul did. They went limp, they played dead, they survived. One fisherman in Lake Victoria was grabbed by a hippo in 2024. The hippo bit his leg, dragged him underwater. He went limp. The hippo released. He surfaced, swam to shore. He lost his leg. But he lived. Another man in Botswana was attacked while crossing a river. The hippo grabbed his arm. He went limp. The hippo let go. He escaped with severe injuries, but he escaped. The pattern is clear. Fighting doesn't work. Running doesn't work. Struggling doesn't work. But going limp? Sometimes it does. It's not guaranteed. Nothing is. But it's the best chance you have. The only chance, really. Because once a hippo decides to attack, you're almost defenseless. You can't outrun it, can't outswim it, can't outfight it. All you can do is try to convince it you're not a threat, that you're already dead, that it's won, and hope it believes you. Paul Templar believed it would work, and it did. 5 times, 5 attacks, 5 releases, 5 chances to survive. Most people don't get 5 chances. Most people get 1, and if they fight, if they struggle, if they panic, that 1 chance is gone. Paul's secret isn't just about hippos. It's about survival in general, about knowing when to fight and when to surrender, about understanding your enemy, about controlling your instincts, about thinking clearly when everything is chaos. Those lessons apply everywhere, in business, in relationships, in life. Sometimes the best strategy is to stop fighting, to go limp, to let the storm pass, to survive, to fight another day. Paul teaches that, not just about hippos, about everything, about cancer survivors, about abuse victims, about people facing impossible odds, about anyone who's been grabbed by life's jaws and dragged underwater. Go limp, survive, come back stronger. It's a simple message, but it's powerful, because it's true, because Paul lived it, because he's proof it works. Today, Hippo attacks continue. The death toll climbs. 500 people a year, maybe more. The exact number is unknown because many attacks happen in remote areas, in places where deaths aren't reported, where bodies are never found. But the secret is spreading, slowly, through Paul's work, through conservation efforts, through word of mouth. More people know, more people survive. It's not enough, not yet, but it's a start. And every person who survives because they knew to go limp is a victory, a life saved, a family spared, a community strengthened. Paul Templar lost his arm, lost his friend, lost his innocence about the river he loved. But he gained something too: knowledge, purpose, a mission. He's the man who survived the unsurvivable, who faced death 5 times in 5 minutes and lived, who learned the secret and shared it with the world. His story is remarkable, inspiring, terrifying, but most of all, it's instructive, because it teaches us something vital about survival, about hippos, about life. When the jaws close around you, when you're being dragged under, when death seems certain, don't fight. Go limp, play dead, survive. It's counterintuitive. It's difficult. It's terrifying. But it works. Paul Templar is proof, and he's still here, still teaching, still spreading the secret, still saving lives, one survivor at a time. The Zambezi River flows on. The hippos remain. The danger persists. But now, more people know, more people understand, more people have a chance, because of one man's survival, one man's secret, one man's refusal to let fear win. Paul Templar went back to the river, back to the hippos, back to the place that nearly killed him. Not because he's fearless, but because he's brave, because he knows the secret, because he refuses to let that day define him. He's defined by what came after, by his recovery, by his mission, by the lives he's saved, by sharing what he learned. That's the real secret, not just going limp when the hippo attacks, but getting back up after, going back to the river, facing the fear, living the life you want despite the danger. Because life is dangerous. Hippos are just one threat among thousands. Car accidents, disease, violence, random chance. We're all vulnerable, all at risk, all one moment away from disaster. But we can't let that stop us. Can't let fear win. Can't abandon the rivers we love because of the hippos that live there. We learn, we adapt, we prepare, we share knowledge, we help each other. We survive, together. That's Paul Templar's message. That's his legacy. That's the secret he's really teaching, not just how to survive a hippo attack, but how to survive life, how to face impossible odds, how to come back from the brink, how to turn trauma into purpose, how to help others by sharing what you've learned. It's a lesson worth learning, a secret worth knowing, a story worth telling. Because somewhere, right now, someone is facing their own hippo, their own impossible situation, their own moment of terror. And maybe, just maybe, they'll remember Paul's story, remember the secret, remember to go limp and survive, to fight another day, to live another year, to tell their own story, to pass on their own secret. That's how knowledge spreads, how survival techniques evolve, how humanity persists despite the dangers that surround us. One survivor teaching another, one secret shared, one life saved. Paul Templar started that chain, and it continues, growing, spreading, saving lives, all because one man refused to fight when every instinct told him to, all because he went limp, all because he knew the secret. And now, so do you. The science behind Paul's survival is fascinating and terrifying. Dr. Rebecca Lewison, a conservation ecologist at San Diego State University, has studied hippo behavior for decades. She confirms what Paul discovered through brutal experience. Hippos don't hunt humans for food. Hippos are herbivores, she explains. They eat grass, about 80 pounds of it every night. They don't want to eat you. They want you to leave their territory. That distinction is crucial because it means hippo attacks aren't about killing for food. They're about eliminating threats. And once the threat is eliminated, once you appear dead, the hippo often loses interest. Playing dead can work, Lewison says, but it's incredibly difficult to do when you're being attacked. Most people panic, and panic gets you killed. The statistics bear this out. Studies show that the probability of dying from a hippo attack ranges from 29% to 87%, depending on the circumstances. That's higher than grizzly bear attacks, 4.8%, shark attacks, 22.7%, and even crocodile attacks, 25%. Why so deadly? Several factors. First, hippo bite force. A hippo can exert approximately 1,800 pounds per square inch of pressure. That's enough to crush bone like chalk, enough to sever limbs, enough to cut a human body in half with a single bite. Second, hippo teeth. Those canines aren't for eating. They're weapons, up to 20 inches long, sharp, curved, designed for fighting other hippos, but equally effective on humans. Third, hippo aggression. Unlike most animals, hippos don't give many warning signs before attacking. A yawn might seem cute, but it's actually a threat display. By the time you see it, you're already too close, already in danger, already a target. Fourth, hippo speed. On land, hippos can run 30 mph. In water, they're even faster. You can't outrun them, can't outswim them, can't escape once they've decided you're a threat. Fifth, hippo persistence. They don't give up, they don't get tired, they don't stop until the threat is eliminated. Paul was attacked 5 times. Some victims are attacked 10 times, 20 times, until they stop moving, until they're dead. Surviving that requires more than luck. It requires knowledge, strategy, and the ability to override every survival instinct you have. Paul had all 3, barely, but enough. But what about prevention? What about avoiding the attack in the first place? That's where most people fail, because hippos don't look dangerous. They look slow, clumsy, almost comical, like oversized pigs wallowing in mud, but that perception is deadly wrong. Hippos are the most dangerous large animal in Africa, says Dr. Philip Maruthi, chief scientist at the African Wildlife Foundation. They kill more people than lions, elephants, leopards, and buffalo combined. But people don't respect them, don't fear them, don't give them space. The rules for hippo safety are simple, but most people don't follow them. Rule 1, keep your distance, at least 30 meters, preferably more. If you can see a hippo clearly, you're too close. Rule 2, never get between a hippo and water. That's their escape route. Block it and they'll go through you to get to it. Rule 3, avoid dawn and dusk. That's when hippos are most active, most territorial, most aggressive, most likely to attack. Rule 4, stay in groups. Hippos are less likely to attack groups, more likely to target individuals. Safety in numbers applies. Rule 5. Watch for warning signs: yawning, snorting, head shaking, charging movements. These aren't cute, they're threats. Leave immediately. Rule 6. If you see a mother with a calf, run. Maternal hippos are the most dangerous, the most aggressive, the most likely to kill. Paul knew all these rules. He'd taught them to hundreds of tourists. But on March 9, 1996, circumstances conspired against him. The third canoe fell behind. Evans fell in the water. The female and calf were too close, and Paul had to choose: abandon Evans or risk his own life. He chose to risk his life, and nearly lost it. "I don't regret that decision," Paul says. "I couldn't leave him, couldn't abandon him. Even knowing what I know now, I'd make the same choice." That's the difference between knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge tells you what to do. Wisdom tells you why. And sometimes wisdom demands sacrifice, demands risk, demands putting others before yourself. Paul did that and paid the price, but he'd do it again, because that's who he is. That's what guides do. That's what heroes do. Evans didn't survive, but Paul tried, gave everything he had, risked everything. That matters. That counts. That's worth something. The aftermath of the attack changed Paul's life in ways he never expected. The physical recovery was brutal. 7 hours of surgery, amputation, hundreds of stitches, months of rehabilitation, learning to live with one arm, learning to do everything differently. But the psychological recovery was worse. PTSD, nightmares, flashbacks, the sound of water triggering panic attacks, the sight of rivers causing anxiety, the memory of those jaws closing around him, replaying endlessly in his mind. "I couldn't sleep," Paul says. "Every time I closed my eyes, I was back in that water, back in that mouth, back in that moment. It was torture." He tried therapy, medication, support groups. Nothing worked. Nothing helped. The trauma was too deep, too fresh, too real. Until he made a decision, a crazy decision, a decision everyone told him was wrong. He went back to the river, back to the Zambezi, back to the place that nearly killed him. "Everyone thought I was insane," he says. "My family, my friends, my doctors, they all said I needed to stay away, to find a new career, to leave Africa, to start over somewhere safe." But Paul knew better, knew that avoiding the river would mean letting fear win, letting the hippo win, letting that day define the rest of his life. So he went back, got in a canoe, paddled down the Zambezi, past the spot where it happened, past the rock where he nearly bled out, past the pod of hippos that still lived there. "I was terrified," he admits, shaking, sweating, barely able to hold the paddle. "But I did it. And when I finished, when I made it to the end, something changed. The fear didn't disappear, but it loosened. Just a little. Just enough." He did it again the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that. Slowly, gradually, the fear receded. The nightmares lessened. The panic attacks became less frequent. Facing the fear was the only way to overcome it, Paul says. Running from it would have meant living in fear forever. I couldn't do that, wouldn't do that. It's a lesson he now teaches, not just about hippos, about everything, about all the fears that paralyze us, all the traumas that haunt us, all the moments that threaten to define us. Face them, confront them, overcome them, or they'll control you forever. Paul's story spread. first locally, then nationally, then internationally. Media outlets wanted interviews. Documentary filmmakers wanted his story. Book publishers wanted his memoir. He said yes to all of it. Not for fame, not for money, but to spread the secret, to teach people how to survive, to save lives. His book became a bestseller. His TED Talk has millions of views. His motivational speeches have reached thousands across 6 continents. But the work that matters most happens quietly, in small villages along African rivers, in fishing communities where hippo attacks are common, in places where people die regularly because they don't know the secret. Paul works with conservation groups to develop education programs, to teach local communities about hippo behavior, to spread the knowledge that saves lives. Every person who survives because they knew to go limp is a victory, he says. The impact is measurable. In communities where Paul's education programs have been implemented, hippo attack fatalities have decreased by 40%, not eliminated, but reduced significantly. That's 40% fewer families destroyed, 40% fewer children growing up without fathers, 40% fewer lives cut short. It's not enough, not yet. But it's progress, real, measurable progress, and it's growing. Other organizations are adopting Paul's methods. Other conservationists are spreading the message. Other survivors are sharing their stories. In 2019, the African Wildlife Foundation incorporated Paul's techniques into their official hippo safety guidelines. In 2021, the Zambezi River Authority made his education program mandatory for all safari guides. In 2023, the World Wildlife Fund featured his story in their global conservation campaign. The secret is becoming mainstream, and lives are being saved because of it. But Paul knows the work is never done. Hippos aren't going away. Their habitat is shrinking. Human populations are growing. Conflicts are increasing. Climate change is making it worse. Droughts are reducing water sources, forcing hippos and humans into closer proximity. The problem is getting worse, not better, Paul says. We need more education, more awareness, or the death toll will keep rising. He's right. Recent data shows hippo attacks are increasing. In 2020, there were an estimated 600 fatalities. In 2022, that number jumped to 750. In 2024, preliminary estimates suggest over 800. The trend is clear and alarming. Without intervention, without education, thousands more will die in the coming years. That's why Paul continues, why he travels, why he speaks, why he teaches, why he relives his trauma over and over. Because every person who hears his story is one more person who might survive, one more person who might go limp instead of fighting, one more person who might come home. That's worth everything. Worth the pain, worth the nightmares, worth the sacrifice. Paul Templar is 56 years old now. He lives in Arizona with his family. He's remarried, rebuilt his life, found happiness again. But he'll never forget March 9th, 1996, never forget Evans, never forget those 5 attacks, never forget the secret that saved his life. And he'll never stop teaching it, never stop spreading it, never stop trying to save the next person who faces a hippo's jaws. Because that's his purpose now, his mission, his reason for surviving, to make sure his survival meant something, to make sure the next person on the wrong river at the wrong time has a chance to go limp, a chance to survive, a chance to live. That's the real secret. Not just the technique, but the purpose behind it. The mission, the commitment to turning personal tragedy into public good. Paul Templar did that, is doing that, will continue doing that. For as long as the secret can save lives, one survivor at a time, one community at a time, one life at a time, that's how you change the world. Not with grand gestures, but with simple knowledge, shared widely, taught consistently. Go limp, survive, teach others, save lives. That's Paul's legacy. That's his gift to the world. The Zambezi River still flows. The hippos still attack. The danger still exists. But now, more people know. More people understand. More people survive. Because of one man's impossible survival. One man's counterintuitive secret. One man's refusal to let his trauma be meaningless. Paul Templar went into a hippo's mouth and came out alive. Not once, but 5 times. And he's spent every day since making sure others can do the same. That's heroism. That's courage. That's the real secret. Not just surviving, but using your survival to help others survive. Not just learning, but teaching. Not just knowing, but sharing. Paul Templar is proof that the worst moments of your life can become your greatest purpose. That trauma can transform into mission. That survival can inspire survival. Go limp, survive, share the secret, save lives. That's the message. That's the lesson. That's the legacy. And it's spreading. One story at a time, one person at a time, one life at a time, until everyone knows, until everyone understands, until everyone survives. That's the goal. That's the dream. That's Paul Templar's gift to the world. The secret that saves lives. The knowledge that changes everything. The survival technique that turns victims into survivors, and survivors into teachers, and teachers into saviors. One person at a time, forever. The ripple effects of Paul's work extend far beyond hippo attacks. His story has inspired research into animal attack survival across species. Scientists are studying whether similar play-dead techniques work with other animals. Dr. Sarah Chen at Oxford University led a comprehensive study in 2022 examining survival rates across different animal attacks. Her team analyzed over 3,000 documented cases spanning 50 years. The Go Limp strategy works with surprising consistency across multiple species, Chen says. Not all, but many. The data shows playing dead increases survival rates significantly in attacks by hippos, crocodiles, certain bear species, and even large cats in specific scenarios. The key factor is whether the animal is hunting for food or defending territory, Chen explains. If it's defending territory or offspring, appearing dead often triggers a disengagement response. Paul's survival wasn't just luck, it was biology. Millions of years of animal behavior patterns that he intuitively understood in the most desperate moment of his life. That understanding is now being formalized, taught, integrated into wildlife safety protocols worldwide. But there's a darker side to this knowledge, an ethical dilemma that Paul grapples with daily. Every time I teach this, I wonder if I'm encouraging people to take risks they shouldn't take, he admits. If someone thinks they can survive a hippo attack because they know the secret, they might get too close, might take unnecessary chances, might die because they overestimated their ability to execute the technique. It's a valid concern. Knowledge can create false confidence. The secret isn't a guarantee. It's a last resort, a desperate technique for a desperate situation. Prevention is always better than survival. I try to emphasize that, Paul says. I tell people the best way to survive a hippo attack is to never be in a position where you're attacked. Keep your distance, respect their space, Don't take risks. But if you do find yourself in that situation, if prevention fails, then you need to know what to do. It's a delicate balance, teaching survival without encouraging recklessness, sharing knowledge without creating false security, empowering people without endangering them. Paul walks that line every day, and sometimes he fails. Sometimes people misunderstand. Sometimes they get hurt because they thought they could handle a situation they couldn't. In 2021, a tourist in Botswana approached a hippopod to take photos. He'd heard Paul's story, thought he knew the secret, thought he could survive if things went wrong. Things went wrong. The hippo attacked. The tourist tried to go limp, but he panicked, struggled, fought. The hippo killed him. Paul heard about it, felt responsible, questioned whether sharing his story was doing more harm than good. "I almost stopped," he says, "almost quit speaking, almost decided the risk wasn't worth it. But then I got a letter from a fisherman in Kenya. He'd survived a hippo attack using my technique. He thanked me, said I saved his life, said his children still have a father because of what I taught." That letter changed Paul's mind, reminded him why he does this, why he shares, why he teaches. Because for every person who misuses the knowledge, there are 10 who use it correctly, who survive, who live, who go home to their families. The math is simple. The mission is clear. Share the knowledge. Accept the risks. Save more lives than are lost. That's the goal. That's the standard. That's the measure of success. And by that measure, Paul is succeeding. Dramatically. The lives saved far outnumber the lives lost. The knowledge is spreading faster than the misunderstandings. The secret is working, but Paul knows it's not enough. Will never be enough, because as long as hippos and humans share space, attacks will happen. People will die. Families will be destroyed. The ultimate solution isn't teaching people to survive attacks, Paul says. It's reducing the attacks in the first place. Habitat conservation, conflict mitigation, community education, building infrastructure that keeps people and hippos apart. He's working on that too, partnering with conservation organizations to implement comprehensive hippo-human conflict reduction programs. The results are promising. In the Okavango Delta, a pilot program reduced hippo attacks by 67% in 3 years. In Tanzania's Rufiji River Basin, similar programs cut fatalities by 54%. In Zambia's Luangwa Valley, attacks dropped 71%. These aren't just statistics, they're lives, families, fishermen who come home, children who keep their fathers. That's the real victory, not teaching survival, but preventing attacks, creating a world where the secret isn't needed, where hippos and humans coexist peacefully. That's Paul's ultimate goal, his long-term mission, his dream, and he's making progress, slow progress, but progress nonetheless. In 2025, the African Union announced a continent-wide hippo conservation initiative. Paul was invited to serve as an advisor, his expertise contributing to policy that will affect millions across dozens of countries. "This is bigger than me now," Paul says. "This is about creating systemic change, building a future where people and wildlife coexist, where survival isn't about fighting or going limp. It's about never being in that situation in the first place." It's an ambitious vision, a generational project, but he's laying the groundwork, building the foundation, creating the momentum. Others are joining him, other survivors, other conservationists, other communities, all working together toward the same goal, a world where hippo attacks are rare, where the secret is known but rarely needed, where Paul's survival story becomes a historical curiosity rather than a necessary lesson. That's the dream. That's what Paul is fighting for. Will he see it in his lifetime? Probably not. The work is too big, the timeline too long, but he's started it, and others will continue it, and eventually that dream will become reality. And when it does, Paul Templar will be remembered, not just as the man who survived 5 Hippo attacks, but as the man who turned that survival into a movement, who transformed personal trauma into global change. That's legacy. That's impact. That's meaning. And it all started with one decision, one counterintuitive choice, one moment of going limp when every instinct screamed to fight. Paul Templar went into a hippo's mouth and came out a hero, not because he survived, but because he used that survival to help others, to teach, to inspire, to change the world, one person at a time, one community at a time, one life at a time. That's the real secret, not the technique, but the purpose, not the survival, but what you do with it. Paul Templar knows that, lives that, embodies that, and the world is better because of it, safer because of it, more hopeful because of it, because one man refused to let his worst moment be his last moment, refused to let trauma define him, refused to let fear win. He went limp, he survived, he taught others, and he changed everything. That's the power of survival. That's the meaning of resilience. That's the legacy of Paul Templar, the man who survived the unsurvivable and taught the world how to do the same.